You know, we're surrounded by something every single day, but we almost never think about it, the printed word. But have you ever stopped to think about how this world of text came to be? And maybe more importantly, how it literally created the world we live in today? Well, let's find out.
Now, really, just for a second, try to imagine a world with no books, no newspapers, no signs, no text on your screen. It's almost impossible, right? Print is just everywhere. But it wasn't always this way, not even close.
Before print, this was the reality. In workshops just like this one, every single word of every single book was painstakingly copied by hand by a scribe. I mean, this made books incredibly rare, ridiculously expensive. They were handmade luxury items, really only accessible to the absolute elite.
And that's where our story begins. In a world where knowledge was basically a treasure, locked away and held by just a select few. It was a world that was just waiting for a spark.
Now, what's so fascinating is that the solution to this huge information bottleneck, it didn't begin in Europe like you might assume. Nope. It started thousands of miles away, in East Asia. The very first sparks of print technology showed up in China, Japan, and Korea as early as 594 AD. Can you believe that? The Chinese were printing books by pressing paper against inked wood blocks. Now, it was a revolutionary process, but still pretty laborious. This text soon traveled to Japan, where it led to the creation of the world's oldest known printed book.
And these early examples are just breathtaking. On the left, you're looking at a page from that very book, the Diamond Sutra. And on the right, that's the Tripitaka Koreana, a massive collection of Buddhist scriptures that were engraved on over 80,000 individual wood blocks. I mean, think about that. This was hand printing on an industrial scale.
And you've got to understand, the goal for these early printers wasn't just to copy text. They wanted to replicate the sheer beauty of calligraphy, that art of stylized writing. And these craftsmen were so skilled, they could duplicate it with remarkable accuracy.
So what did all this brilliant technology lead to? Well, a flourishing print culture, especially in Japan. In the bustling urban centers of Edo, which we now know as Tokyo, illustrated books and art prints like this one became cheap and super abundant. They depicted everything from famous actors to beautiful landscapes.
Okay, so we've got this game-changing technology happening in the East. But the big question is, how did it make that epic journey west to a continent that was still, painstakingly copying books by hand?
Well, a lot of that knowledge traveled west along the famous Silk Road. When the explorer Marco Polo returned to Italy in 1295 after spending years in China, he was one of many who helped carry this incredible idea to Europe. And boy, did it arrive at the perfect moment.
See, Europe had this huge problem. The old way of doing things, creating handwritten manuscripts, was just way too slow and expensive. It couldn't keep up with this new, growing, insatiable hunger for books from merchants and university students. Demand was just far, far outstripping supply. Woodblock printing definitely helped, but it was still too slow for what Europe needed. Europe needed a breakthrough. It needed a total game changer. And that game changer came in the form of a man named Johann Gutenberg.
Now, the thing about Gutenberg is he wasn't just one thing. He was this perfect storm of different skills. He grew up on an estate, so he knew exactly how wine and olive presses worked. But he was also a master goldsmith, an expert at polishing stones and creating these really precise lead molds.
And this right here is where the magic happens. Gutenberg brilliantly combined all these different technologies. He used the olive press as a model for the machine, and he used his goldsmith skills to create individual movable metal letters, or type. This was the key. See, unlike a woodblock where you had to carve an entire page from one piece of wood, movable type meant you could just rearrange the letters to create endless new pages. This was the invention that was going to change the world. This wasn't just some small improvement. This was a revolution. The shift from hand printing to mechanical printing changed absolutely everything. And believe me, the numbers are absolutely staggering. So get this. In just the first 50 years of the printing press, Europe saw about 20 million books flood the market. An incredible number, but that was just the warm-up. Because in the next century, that number just exploded. It went from 20 million to 200 million copies. That is a tenfold increase. This was the moment that information was truly unleashed on the world. Okay, so when you have an explosion of books on that kind of scale, things are gonna change big time.
It didn't just change how books were made, it totally reshaped societies. It challenged beliefs that had been held for centuries, and it redrew the very map of power in Europe.
And this right here shows the most fundamental change. Before print, you basically had a hearing public. Knowledge was a shared oral experience. People would gather together to hear somebody read a text out loud. But with cheap, accessible books, a reading public was born. Suddenly, reading became this private, individual, silent act.
I mean, this single piece of technology completely rewired society. It slashed the cost of books, transforming our relationship with information. All of a sudden, new ideas could just bypass the traditional gatekeepers. Religious reformers like Martin Luther could spread their ideas across an entire continent, sparking the Protestant Reformation. Scientists could share and build on each other's work, fueling the scientific revolution. For the first time ever, debate and dissent could happen on a massive scale. Knowledge was no longer handed down from on high, it was democratized.
The printing press didn't just create books, it created the intellectual movements that built the modern world we live in. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As we live through our own digital age, what is the next great information revolution? And what new world is it busy creating for us right now?